Your customers don't choose you. You choose your customers, and how you project
Yeah.
yourself will allow that to happen. If you're trying to speak to everyone, you're speaking to no one. So let's draw a line in the sand right now. Let's stick to our beliefs, and let's not get bent out of shape when we have a couple knuckleheads commenting on Instagram.
Welcome to the Mountain Tough Podcast, brought to you by Sig Sauer. What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Mountain Tough Podcast. I am Dustin Diefender for host and CEO, and we are so glad that you are here. We love seeing you come back week after week, diving into these episodes. And it is our goal each and every episode to bring you an inspiring guest that helps you transform your life, that adds some mindset tools to that mental fitness toolbox, unpacking mindset techniques, tips, and tricks from some of the world's most inspiring guests. Thanks for making us one of the top mental toughness podcasts in the country. And if you are a new listener or a loyal listener, and if you haven't done so already, leaving a ranking or review on the podcast store of your choice does mean the world to us. We love seeing your feedback come through on the show, what we can do to sharpen. Iron sharpens iron, so we are big fans of feedback, and the rankings and the reviews through the algorithm do get these episodes out to more people to transform more lives. Switching over to today's guest on the show today, we have a returning guest. We have the CEO and founder of Born Primitive, Bear Handlon. Bear's been a prior guest on the Mountain Tough show, and we are close. We've done a lot of work together between Mountain Tough and Born Primitive, and he is an outspoken founder that is leading a very passionate brand, standing up for his belief in what he believes in, and making sure that his customers know that, so that they're supporting a mission and they're united around that mission. A very patriotic brand focused on veterans, military, the first responder community. Bear himself was a Navy SEAL officer. He played college football at Yale. And we're going to dive into some great topics today, from personal agency. How do you lead your own life, which is very important, and also how do you lead an outspoken brand. Lastly, he announces a huge announcement today on the show. Born Primitive is raising, through purchases on their website, 100% of the profits will be donated to fighting this battle. They're trying to write a $5 million check to eliminate medical debt for veterans. They've already raised 2.5. They're trying to raise another 2.5 million to eliminate debt for veterans. An amazing campaign. Hopefully we can rally the troops to support those guys. But stand by for my conversation with Bear Handlon. Right now, as we're recording, every indicator, I mean, there's a lot of different sources, but almost all open, transparent sources are continuing to say the message of neck and neck, like
Yep.
to almost neck and neck here, neck and neck there. And so not much indicators yet on which direction this thing's going to swing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, man. I think, regardless, I mean, I think if Kamala Harris were to win this, it'll be a fascinating case study of how, the media is able to persuade, 80 million plus people, on a theory, whereas, 3 or 4 months ago, you had the lowest approved vice president, I think, in recorded history, worse than Joe Biden, who had a terrible rating. 79% of the country says we're on the wrong track. So how in a 3-month period were they able to convince 80 million Americans that somehow, that's the answer? So if she does win, that's a fascinating testament to the American media machine, and how, people are able to influence the masses, right? And the powers that be that might be behind that. And one thing I thought was
Mm-hmm.
interesting is I think at this point, Kamala Harris has raised about 3 times as much as Trump. I mean, I think she's raised over $1 billion. So it's interesting because people associate Trump. He's the billionaire. He's in with all the high rollers, and it's like, okay, well, the numbers don't lie. The person that's claiming to be the
Yeah.
champion of the middle class is getting all the money from all the billionaires while promoting a narrative that she's going to be the one to go after the billionaires and pay their fair share. And
Mm-hmm.
that's just simply not the case, because these people wouldn't be donating hundreds of millions of dollars to her to support her campaign if that was a true narrative, right? So it's very ironic. But we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
I think no matter how strong the American media machine is, at the end of the day, the reality is the reality. And that's why I think Trump will probably win this election, because when people can't afford groceries and things like that, I mean, people will, I think, put their political biases aside for the reality of what they're experiencing in day-to-day life. And I think that's
Yeah.
why,
And that's across the board.
I personally think I don't think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be a pretty substantial win for Trump. But you never know, right? Because historically he,
Mm-hmm.
is he underpolls. So hey, if they're neck and neck, that means he's up by 5 points. However, maybe the pollsters have corrected, right, in over the last 8 years. So you can't like take that to the bank. But I think when he beat Clinton, he was down 6.5 points in the general poll, right, going into that day, which is
Mm-hmm.
crazy. That's why that was such a shock. People thought that was in the bag. Um,
We all went to bed that night knowing it was in the
yeah, well,
bag,
and
and
I
it
I
wasn't.
remember I got up to
Insane.
take a leak, and I just turned it on just for kicks. And I was like, it's 3 in the morning, and they had called it, and I was like, wait a second, like this has got to be a hoax, you know what I mean? Because
It was
yeah,
weird.
so you never know, man. And but we'll see. I don't know. What do you think?
Man, I don't know. I I wonder, regardless of what happens tonight, I definitely have a lot of thoughts lately about where we're headed. Maybe not in our lifetimes, but in our children's lifetime, or maybe we'll see some of it in our life. But the topics now that we're split over are so much different than they were 10, 15, 20 years ago. And they are hard lines in the sand for me. So it makes me wonder, and there's more and more conversations about this now around, like, are we going to need to actually split as a country? Are we going to need to split because these are not taxes, bridges, and road conversations that we're arguing about
Yeah,
over anymore? Now it is. It used to be pro-choice campaigns, but now it's pro-abortion, which is insanity to me, and then it's mutilating children under a healthcare system. That's insanity to me. So it's not the same as high tax, low tax conversation. So whether that is coming soon or coming in 10 or 15 years, it seems like there is this shift, there is this movement where we might need some sort of like separation of the United States, because these are not issues you can just meet in the middle about and sleep okay at night after meeting in the middle on some of these topics.
yeah, I've thought about that too, man. It has gotten so insane, and the Democratic Party right now is unrecognizable from what they were 20 years ago. I mean, if you listen to some of the narrative in the early 2000s about the border and all these other issues, the Democrats, when you compare them to what they are now, seem a lot more reasonable in their policy. Now there's still, of course, policy difference, but it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
as divided. I mean, right now. Yeah, I agree with you, man. There's some things that I'm not willing to meet halfway on those things, right? And I,
Mm-hmm.
I've always thought if they could separate the states, and let the Republican states be their own and the Democrats, I think it would be a hilarious experiment. And this is just my humble opinion. But in a 10-year period, it'd be very obvious which system was right. All the
Yeah.
Democratic states would have everyone would be gender neutral, and crime would be through the roof and everyone's a victim. And then in the Republican states, People be working hard, get back to family values, belief in God, love of country, basic patriotic values that, 50 years ago was just kind of ingrained in the American spirit. So I kind of
Mm-hmm.
chuckle, like, yeah, we should try that experiment. Let's see which, then we can validate the experiment. You guys think that's best for our country? We think this, let's put them to the test and see who flourishes.
But
Um,
yeah,
but
side by
yeah, I
side.
think it's interesting, so particularly, the stuff with like immigration. I think that is the biggest gaslight of all time, right? I think Biden,
Mm-hmm.
signed 48 executive orders the first day in office to reverse border control stuff. And, to oversimplify it, the policies he enacted essentially was a red carpet across our border. You know what I mean? It was like, hey, come on
Yeah.
in. We're going to give you a phone. We're going to give you food stamps. We're going to give you a debit card, and we'll even put you up at the Roosevelt, New York City. Well, what do you think that's going to do? Well, someone that's in an impoverished country in Central America, it's going to make them want to come, right? Because
They're coming.
you are broadcasting, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Why don't you come across? You're going to have all this opportunity. And guess what? We're going to give you a court date that's 8 years from when you come across. And in the meantime, we're going to provide you with all these things. And then guess what? You're probably not going to show up for your court date. We know it, wink, wink. So, hey,
Yeah.
and what are they saying? Upwards of 20 million. And guess what? Now they're talking about how voter ID is racist and all these things. And we all knew that was coming, and we knew it early, right? It's the second, I don't know if you
Mm-hmm.
remember this. Georgia was the first one to kind of change back their laws to require voter ID. And it was, I think, from what I remember, a lot of the adjustments to the laws was specific to COVID, right? So when COVID was done, a lot of these states said, okay, we're going to go back to the old way because we don't have a pandemic anymore. And this is the new requirements for voting. Well, in a coordinated
Yeah.
effort, the left tried to say, oh, this is some racist play. And if you remember, the CEO of Delta Airlines wrote an open letter saying, we're going to leave Atlanta. I think Coca-Cola did. The MLB moved their All-Star game from Atlanta and went to Coors Field in Colorado because they're claiming over a voter ID. And, reasonable people like you and me are
Insane.
sitting there saying, hey, what are we missing? How is this one? What does this have to do with race? No one mentioned race. And two, are you suggesting
Mm-hmm.
that minorities don't have the ability to obtain an ID? All right, well, that's racist, not requiring an ID to vote. Are we saying, ironically, the CEO of Delta, okay, buddy, is it racist that I have to give an ID to get on your airplane when I fly Delta? What's the difference? You know what I mean? You're not saying it's racist to go show an
Mm-hmm.
ID at a liquor store. So you quickly saw the playbook unfolding, and they were doing it right in front of us, and they are blatant and they don't even care. California just ruled that you can't have a voter ID, right? And it's like, these are things
You can't
you literally
show it.
can't show
Yeah.
it. And it's like, guys, you aren't even trying to hide this. And Elon Musk had a fascinating interview with Rogan that just dropped a couple of days ago, which, the eve of the election, I thought that was awesome. But even he had Fetterman on,
Yeah.
and thank you, Joe Rogan, for putting Fetterman in his place. He basically finally got him to concede that, yes, that is the plan. Because guess what? If you bring in 20 million people into the country and 95% of them are Democrat, and you send them to all the swing states, you're never winning a Republican election ever again in history, right? And then
Yeah.
the landscape. I mean, you've literally, in a roundabout way, rigged every election in perpetuity. So to me, the question I think becomes, if this becomes effective, and this leads to us, leading down a path of socialism and all these other things, and the erosion of our American values, at what point does it warrant a response? You know what I mean? And I'm not like really
Mm-hmm.
advocating violence or anything like that, but there's a whole generation of warriors in this country, man, that at what point does the warrior class need to step in, right? We take an oath,
Yeah.
man, foreign and domestic. At what point do they cross the line where it becomes so obvious that the people that are driving us off a cliff are doing it for their own gain and as a detriment to our republic, right? And I don't know
Mm-hmm.
where that line is, and I hope we never get there, but we're surely going in that direction, in my opinion, because you can only get tapped
Yeah.
in the chest so many times before you come back with a right hook, right? And right
Yeah.
now, we've been getting
Yeah.
poked in the chest for 10 years, and we've been gaslit and all these things. Oh, you're a bigot, you're this. And it's like, hey, man, I just want the government to stay the hell out of my way, and I want to raise a family, right? I love my country. I love
Mm-hmm.
what it stands for. I want to be able to believe in God without getting outcasted, right? Those aren't crazy controversial things. I don't want my daughter, when she's in middle school, to have a boy come into her restroom that day because he thinks he's a girl, but he really just wants to look under someone's skirt because he's a pervert, right? I
Yeah.
don't want, a 8-year-old who thinks all of a sudden that they need to change gender, that, they need to go talk to someone and the parents can't know about him. Before you know it, they're, now identifying as the other sex. They're 8 years old. They're still picking their nose, for Christ's sake. You know what I mean? You,
Yeah.
you think of all the
Yeah.
dumb shit when we were that age, and now they want to make the most irreversible thing permanent, right? It's just,
It's
you
insanity.
can't even reason, man. And that's why it's so hard to compromise, because I want to compromise, but it's like, guys, these aren't even reasonable debates. These are completely insane ideas that you guys are pushing, and eventually there's going to be a breaking point. So
Yeah.
yeah, man, we'll see what happens. I pray for us.
Hey guys, I did want to interrupt for a quick minute right here and let you know about some supplements I've been taking. I did shy away from supplements for a long time. I was always cautious about what they were made out of, where they were from, and who the team was behind the brands. But over the last couple of years, I've got to meet the team at Mountain Ops from top to bottom, and they are an amazing group of humans. I've got to know the CEO, Trevor Farnes, really well, and he is a mission-focused individual that cares about humans living a better quality of life so that they can have that abundant life. So over the last couple of years, he has helped me add some things that have changed the game for me. One of those things that I've added is creatine from Mountain Ops. It helps me maintain some muscle mass, but also it's a big player in cognitive function, one of the most researched supplements out there. Also, I've added reds, greens, and protein, all from Mountain Ops. What I found as a busy professional, always on the run, I do eat a whole foods diet for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but on the go, it's hard to get enough vegetables, fruits, and protein. So I've added that from Mountain Ops, and it has significantly changed the game. I can feel it in my performance. I haven't got sick for a long time, and I can certainly feel it in my mental clarity as well. The last thing I've added is the Mountain Tough Hydrate product for the backcountry, for hunting season. When I'm in the hills, I do run short on those electrolytes. We even have a Mountain Tough flavor, the Mountain Tough Lemon Lime Hydrate, and that is a game changer for hydration in the backcountry. So I keep it really simple. That is all I've added to my protocol, and it has certainly helped me, and I certainly believe in the team and the culture behind Mountain Ops. They have started an initiative that's been around for a while called Conquer Hunger. Conquer Hunger is giving meals to hungry kids that aren't getting enough food, and they've given out over 6 million meals plus to kids through their Conquer Hunger initiative. So every order that happens at Mountain Ops, a percentage of that order goes to Conquer Hunger. So certainly an incredible company, an incredible culture. As a listener to the show, you do get an exclusive offer to Mountain Ops, so make sure you check that out. The offer is incredible as a first-time purchase at mountainops.com. So build your order if it's your first time. They are offering you a 20% exclusive discount. All you need to do is enter the promo code MOUNTAINTOUGH, all one word, all caps, for 20% off your first order at mountainops.com. You've been listening to the Mountain Tough podcast. Yeah, it's biblical too. I mean, there's Ezekiel 33 that talks about being the watchman, and talking about when you see these things, when you see these evil things happening, and you don't sound the alarm, you don't do something about it, then you do have blood on your hands. You are going to be judged for that, for knowing something is this evil, this deceptive, but not doing anything is the same judgment as if you were doing the evil act itself. So it definitely seems like there is an awakening around that finally, where we can't just sit here and be quiet. We can't be quiet when the bigot card is played. We have to be bringing these issues to the surface, and at least there's certainly like an awakening around that happening with the warrior spirit in America.
I love that, man. I think that's a great reference. And I do think we're seeing that. And that's why I think today is going to be a landslide, because I think that has um, begin to take place. And, the fear is contagious, but so is courage. Right. And I think a few years ago, we were at a point that Delta Airlines and Coca-Cola and MLB could get away with polling shit like that. And, other than a
Mm-hmm.
few limited media outlets, no one would touch it because they're like, well, I don't want to be labeled as that guy. So yeah, you're right. Voter ID is racist, and people are just sheep. They just follow along. Um, and I think we're to the point now where it's just gotten so ridiculous that normal people are saying, all right, I get it. Maybe someone leans left, but like, guys, what are y'all doing? This is, you've way
Yeah.
overdone it here. And to me, because there's, it's a pretty pessimistic time right now. But also, if you look at our history, there's been moments in our history where we were in a bad spot as a country, and we bounced back. I think a lot of people
Yeah.
seem to think once these values are eroded, there's no going back. So once, gender isn't a thing anymore, it's just going to be permanent forever. And, we'll talk about the days when we were younger, when there was men and women, right? These things I think can get reversed. It's just, we
Mm-hmm.
need to make sure that people are outspoken and just not willing to roll over and let, particularly, man, the people that are doing it are just the biggest betas anyway, right? Like, it's like we're afraid of these guys, like, the people really pulling the strings behind the scenes. And it's like, when you stack them up against, guys like you and me,
It's a
it's
lot.
like, come on, man. Like, what are we scared of here? If it
Yeah.
came to that, I think I like our odds, right? But
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I think it was veiled with a cloud of deception for a while, where we went through a we went through a season where everything was just so confusing, where you couldn't really put your finger on the pulse of what was actually happening. And I think that was their intent, was if you make things confusing enough, then you don't really know how far things have slipped. And I think people are waking up to, this went way too far. It's finally time to have these conversations. It definitely is like finally a time where things are apparent enough that it's that moment of not on our watch for a lot of American men right now.
Yeah, I'm reading this book called Atomic Habits. I don't know if you've read it. And I'm going to butcher this
Hmm.
analogy, but there's a chapter in it that talks about a psychological experiment that was done a while back. I don't know how old it was, but the gist of it, and again, I'm oversimplifying, so don't beat me up in the comments. Was, you got a bunch of people in a room, and they show a note card that has three different lengths of line. So let's say line A is the shortest, line B is a middle length line, and line C is the longest of the three lines, right? Then they put a note card below it that has line B on it, the length of line B, and they go around the room and they ask everyone, what line is that? Right? The answer is B. Right? Everyone can see it, but the people in the room are planted to all say it's the wrong answer. So the person at the very end of the experiment is tested on his own resolve of what the real answer is versus how much he's influenced by the group. And how it turned
Yeah.
out was, the larger the group was, and they all dissented, they're all saying it's either A or C. It had a stronger influence on that last individual who, even though he knew it was B, would give the wrong answer, because he didn't want to be an
Hmm.
outlier from the group. And when I read that, man, it really, stuck out to me, because I was like, God damn it. That's exactly what
Yeah.
has been happening in our society the last few years, and the media is the one that's creating the perception of it's A or C. Everyone knows it's B.
Hmm.
You can see it with your own eyes, but guess what? If that news outlet's saying it's this and that, and if these people that try to say it's B are canceled on social media and are deplatformed on YouTube, well, shoot, maybe it is A. And then they, because a lot of people don't have their own convictions, they're just going to follow the herd. Where if you and I were in that room,
Yeah.
it'd get to us and we'd say, y'all are crazy. It's clearly
It's
B,
B.
y'all are nuts. You're smoking crack. That's what
Yeah.
I would say. But not everyone is kind of against the grain, like guys like you or me. Right.
Hmm.
And if that example is like, man, that's exactly what is happening right now. That's how we erode our values, because little by little they get people to concede these things, right? Because they're like, well, shoot, I
Yeah.
thought I was for that, but if everyone else is for the other thing, I should probably just change my beliefs. And I think that's how it happens. It's like the boiling frog analogy you've probably heard, right? You throw a
Yeah,
pot,
that's exactly
you
what's
throw a
happening.
frog in boiling
Yeah.
water, it jumps out because it knows it's gonna, boil alive. Well, you put it in a pot with room temperature water, you turn that burner on low, and you let it slowly come to a boil. Well, it's not going to know to jump out because it's happening gradually and it doesn't even
Yeah.
realize it. I think maybe we're that frog in that pot, but fortunately, I think there's some people saying, "Wait a second, we're starting to see bubbles here. We might want to jump out.
Yeah.
There's something going sideways here." You know what I mean?
It's
And
getting
hopefully, yeah,
warm.
it's getting warm. So we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild. Well, let's transition. I wanted to cover two topics today related to this conversation, but the first one I wanted to dive in with you for a while about is personal agency. And so you have taken some steps in your life to really lead your life, design your life how you want it to look, especially from your passions and your business. And you made some decisions along the way to not really be passive and just take whatever life is delivering you. You made some decisions that I'm going to design my life and go after the things I want to go after. And not every person has that. Not every person has that ability. And it's an interesting debate. Like, is it built in you? Is it wired in you? Is it part of your DNA? Some people are visionaries, some people are not. But certainly there are a lot of people that are struggling with personal agency, that they have these business ideas in the back of their mind. They have these ideas that they know are going to work, or they know they should live in a different state, or they should take this different job, but they're just so overcome with fear. They're so scared of failure. They're scared to take these risks. And so that leaves them in this like pretty depressed, passive state. And the interesting thing to me is it actually is something that I've seen personally with a lot of special operations members as well. So you, as a special operations former soldier, have taken a lot of personal agency and led your life. But at the same time, what we've seen a lot of with the work that Mountain Tough is doing with some units is a lot of veterans who are the best and masters of their craft and are not scared to run into gunfire and scared to jump out of airplanes. They are scared to start this dream business that they know is going to work, but they've never done something like that before, and they're used to being very good at everything they do. And so even them are struggling kind of with this personal agency concept. But I think what you know and what I know is this personal agency concept certainly comes with some big battles and some highs and lows, but it's definitely the best thing I've ever done. And I'm assuming you're going to say the same thing, that just taking these leaps of faith and building your life how you want it is number one, like the most rewarding way to live. But the people that aren't doing that are struggling. But when did you kind of start noticing this in your own life?
Yeah, it's a good question, man. I mean, I think I've always had kind of that knack, even in an early age. When I was I think in sixth grade, I started a lawn mowing business, just walking door to door with a mower, asking people if I can mow their lawn, right? Just scrappy little kid. And that grew into a pretty substantial little lawn mowing and landscaping business through college. And then when I
Mm-hmm.
graduated college, I started another business that actually failed. Um, pretty substantially, and like I immediately turned around and launched Born Primitive with like no plan, right? So I think I've always been one that's been willing to play a lot of hands, with, I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to say reckless abandon, but I'm aggressive in my risk threshold in life, right? It's funny, my brother, yeah, my middle brother Matt, is like the exact opposite. We like look almost identical, same build. He was a college football player, I was too, went to the same school. He's like the
Yeah.
exact opposite. Play everything safe. And it's worked well for me. He's got a great family. He makes good money. He's working on Wall Street. There's something to that, where I've been the exact
Yeah.
opposite. Fire from the hip, follow your gut, don't analyze anything, just go for it. And I think there's definitely pitfalls with that. But I think, one thing to call out on the entrepreneurial angle is I tell guys to proceed with caution, right? And particularly where they are on that risk threshold should matter. Like if they're a low risk person, then don't maybe start your own business. If you just did 20 years in the teams and you're retired and you've been away from your kids for 20 years and now it's time to build some equity back up with the family, and be present, maybe don't go start your own business, right? You have a retirement. You can go work for a good job, be home at 5 o'clock, put your phone down, and maybe build back some of that time that you've been gone. So I think there's factors guys should take into account, because I also think that just because you excel in one thing does not mean you're going to be good at the next thing. And being a special operator and running a business, while I think that type of individual has a much higher chance of success, there's a lot of guys that were teammates with me that I think would be really shitty at running a business, but they would make a great employee and they would be a huge asset for any organization.
Hey guys, there are a lot of trends out there. And one trend that I've personally found in my own life through experience that has been a game changer is cold plunging and cold water therapy. The benefits for me have been off the charts when it comes to two main categories. The physical inflammation reduction from cold plunging every day has been a complete game changer, but my favorite part of cold water therapy has been the mental aspect, the mental clarity, the stress reduction, and most importantly, the ability to build mental toughness every day in a very simple way by just forcing myself to get in that cold water has been a drastic improvement that is easy, fast, and efficient. I've tried countless different ways to access cold water therapy, from the redneck version horse troughs to building my own cold plunge system off Amazon parts and pieces. Every time I've tried that, it has been a disaster until we found Ice Barrel. Ice Barrel is the most advanced barrel design on the market, and they have the most advanced high-tech chiller on the market as well. I've met the CEO, I've worked out with the CEO, we've had them at the lab. They're a great team, American-made manufacturing, and we're proud to announce that you can now access a discount on Ice Barrel products. All you need to do as a podcast listener is use the code MOUNTAINTOUGH. That's going to get you 15% off all Ice Barrels except the chiller. Again, that's MOUNTAINTOUGH, all caps, all one word, on icebarrel.com. You've been listening to the Mountain Tough podcast.
I always speak at this thing called the Honor Foundation, and it's for transitioning special operations veterans that are going into the workplace. And they always bring me on for the entrepreneurial panel. And I always I think I give them a very sobering answer on what they think I'm going to come in and say, you should do it. It's awesome. Look at me, look at this success story. And I kind of give them the opposite, a very pessimistic angle. And I say, hey fellas, all right, 7% chance of success. It might take you 5 or 6 years before you even make a penny. I mean, for us with Born Primitive, Mal and I had done it for 7 years. We didn't take a penny out of the business. This is while I'm active duty, taking up every weekend, every early morning, every late night, no free time, every vacation. That's what it took, right? So if you think it's some glamorous, sexy thing, you're sadly mistaken. And I think it's important to know what you're signing up for. And I know you can relate to that. That being said, if it lights you on fire and you're staring at the ceiling every night thinking about it, and you think the idea is strong, and if you go work for a corporate, company or whatever, you're going to be at your cubicle all day thinking of this idea and you can't kick it, that's when you should do it, right? If it's just I think that would work, let me give it a shot, that might be cool. If it's not a hell yeah, don't do it. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what I
Yeah.
tell guys. And it's like, hey man, working for the man isn't the end of the world. That's not a bad thing. If you find a good employer and you have a good manager and you benefits and you can see your family and go to the softball games on the weekend and the gymnastics meets, then that's not a bad life. You know what I mean? Because guess what? Guys like
Yeah.
you and me are probably missing some of those things because we got to run the business, right?
Yeah.
So that's just kind of my take on it.
For sure.
But my opinion on it is play a lot of hands to the point while you can, because eventually there's a point where you can't anymore. You're married, you got kids, you got people depending on you. Well, now it's not fair to some of those family members that you're incurring risk on them as well. But if you're 31 and you're a single guy and you know what I mean, freaking go for it. What's the worst that could happen? You know what I mean? You're eating
Yeah.
ramen noodles, watching TV on a milk crate in a one bedroom apartment. Who cares? We could live that life. Give us a weight room and some purpose and some football on Sundays, and we're good. You know, we don't need anything fancier than that.
Mm-hmm.
We're just normal dudes, right? So, but you know, when you got three little ones running around and a wife, well, you know, watching TV on the milk crate and
Changes.
eating ramen probably isn't, you know, the best scenario for the family, right? So I think context matters as
Yeah.
well.
Do you find that your attitude around this has inspired a lot of people around the Born Primitive community and even some of your employees to take some of their own personal risks? Just like you, but leading with this example, has it fired some people up around you that are like, man, I'm going for this thing because I've kind of seen what Bear has done, and I know that I might fail, but at least I'm going to take this shot.
Yeah, I think it probably has. You know, I've gotten a lot of feedback from our podcast, people just, you know, DMing me on Instagram saying, hey, like I listened to the episode today and like I'm fired up. I want to give this a shot now. I've been in a rut and, you know, now like I think that gave me what I needed to kind of pull the trigger. But I think I've
Mm-hmm.
also provided hopefully some, you know, some enough word of caution of kind of don't do what I did. Don't launch a business 2 months before you join the military. Have a plan. Maybe don't start it with your spouse. I don't advise that. You know, things like that. That, you know, if you could roll the tape back and do it over again, I, you know, probably would do it a little bit differently. But I hope that's the case
Yeah.
because I think a lot of people seem to think that, you know, being an entrepreneur and being a successful business owner is just reserved for these people that are held on a pedestal and oh well, they're must be more intelligent than me and they're better at this, better at that. It's like that's an inferiority complex that is in your own head, right? There's nothing
Mm-hmm.
special about what we're doing. We're crazy enough to have belief in whatever it was we were pursuing, right? So don't put us
Yeah.
on a pedestal. We're normal just like everyone else. And I don't want people to be limited by the lack in belief in their own abilities, right? If there's passion behind it and they really believe in it, you'll find a way to win. But you know, it needs
Mm-hmm.
to come with the realistic expectation of, okay, well, you're going to have to do more than 99% of the rest of the population, right? Because that's what it
Yeah.
takes to be in the 7% that succeed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw the same thing. I remember when I got out of college, I had a management marketing and entrepreneurship degree, and I remember I had a great upbringing, and our family was big time on work ethic, but we weren't big time on risk taking. In my family, my dad had been with the same employer before retirement for like 32 years, and so entrepreneurship was like this crazy risk concept to him. And I met this kid, and this kid was like 8 years younger than me, and he was this Ohio farm kid with an insane work ethic. But his upbringing was different in that, like, his mentality and his DNA was way more around there's no one you should be scared of calling. There's no one you should be scared of knocking on their door. There's really nothing that is impossible. Anything we want to go after is at our fingertips. Like, no one in this world, in this country, is better than you or better than us. Like we're all dumpster fires. Some of us are good at some things and others. But it was so inspiring to be around that mentality that you can do anything you want if you back it up with that work ethic and you just knock down these doors and get in front of the right people. And I hadn't seen that really before in my upbringing, but that just interaction with that one dude, and spending a bunch of time with him definitely like eventually led to the creation of Mountain Tough. We started a few other things before that, but that mindset of like anything you want is possible if you want it bad enough, just go get it.
Yeah, I love that, man, because I've thought a lot about this too. Is like, I think for the people that have the drive, it doesn't really matter what lane you choose. You're going to be successful regardless of what that path is, right? Like you could be running an HVAC business, right? And you might turn that thing to gold. It's not the HVAC business. It's the mentality you bring to whatever it is that you're doing. Now you might get punched in the nose a couple times and have to pivot, but the people that are wired right can pivot and they'll find a way to win. And that's business, right? I mean, if our businesses don't evolve in time, in 10 years, both of our businesses will be dead, right? So you guys like you and me, we have to be on the front end of what's happening in the consumer space to be able to adapt our business, over time. That's why you see, some companies like, Sears, right? They used to rule the world. Now they're dead. There's a graveyard of corporations that we could cite that didn't evolve with the times. And I think just the underlying mentality is, be scrappy and don't get complacent. Because as soon as you think you've made it, the game changes, right? Meta will change their ad algorithm for, that's a big one for us. We advertise a lot on Meta. iOS 14 came in and it's like, oh, we were on the gravy train and boom, now it's time for everyone to sober up. The golden years are over. And, then COVID comes in and supply chain issues and all this. So there's always going to be a challenge on the horizon. But if you come at it with the right mentality, you can get around most of those.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're always changing, always evolving and knowing that it's not going to be an overnight success. I mean, we joke all the time now that like Mountain Tough's a 9-year overnight success at this point. So it's a lot of hard work.
Yeah, a lot of lonely nights, man, doing emails when no one, that's the stuff people don't see. It's midnight and you're in your kitchen doing emails or checking the app or, whatever you have to do on your end. Everyone else, drank a beer 3 hours ago and went to bed, or got to watch Monday Night Football. You know what I mean? So that's what it takes, man.
When did you start having these conversations with your team around being an outspoken brand? Because that's unique, right? Like in Mountain Tough, we talk about it because it's an interesting dynamic. There's not many examples out there that you can cite of organizations that have done it well. There are a few, but we're similar with you and Born Primitive in that we've kind of made this decision that we are going to be somewhat outspoken, and you've done the same. Like just last week we launched daily prayer in our app, so we have a fresh guided prayer every single day. And when we knew that we were going to lose some customers over that, but we were completely fine with that decision. You're doing a lot of the same things from a different vein, but there aren't a lot of models we can look at that are like, these guys are outspoken and this is what's worked well for them. A lot of it is kind of building it on the fly. I've used a ton of Bluetooth speakers over the years, and they all have never quite had enough output for me to really have an awesome home gym workout on a Bluetooth speaker. But the Turtle Box is in a whole new ball game. They have leveled up this product, so the bass and the output you get out of a Turtle Box is quite amazing. It's funny how we started using them at the lab. We had an awesome sound system at our new lab here in Bozeman. We were using it so much, we actually blew our brand new system out. We went right to the Turtle Boxes. And so we paired two together in the lab. And that was a lot of output for the Mountain Tough team and all of our testing to have phenomenal sound in our gym for a great workout with great music. We know there's a ton of Mountain Toughers training in their basements, in their garages. And I know a lot of you are looking for great sound to play some music in the background to your MGDs. This is a great product for you to check out. Turtle Box is at a whole new level. The bass and the volume you can get out of that box. It's a sweet product. You guys can check them out at turtleboxaudio.com. Use promo code TOUGH for a free Turtlebox hat with the purchase of a Gen 2 speaker. The hat must be added to your cart before entering the promo code TOUGH, TOUGH. You've been listening to the Mountain Tough Podcast.
Yeah, I don't know if there was a deliberate moment, man. When we started Born Primitive, Mal and I, like, the values of the company and the personality traits of the brand was literally just us, right? Like, we weren't creative enough to create like a fictitious person that would become the brand and who it is to be Born Primitive. It was just, we're, patriotic kids from Indiana, believe in God, love our country. Okay, well, if we're starting a company, the company's going to have the same values, right? Because that's just who we are. And I'm not smart enough to come up with an alter ego person. So it really was in the beginning. It was just us portrayed through Born Primitive, right? And it still is. Everything we do here is genuine and authentic. You can take one look at us and kind of see, what we believe in as a company. I think one pivotal moment where I realized, okay, this is kind of becoming a bigger deal was during all the riots. And we had always supported the first responder community, and we still do. And we're unapologetic in that. And of course, we support the veteran community. And we had always sold thin blue line and thin red line apparel, and we would donate a portion of the proceeds of the thin blue line stuff to a police charity that supported the families of fallen officers, right? And we would donate to them every year. And, we would put in the description of the product that a portion of this goes to a good cause. And the riots were going on, and we were getting hate mail, people saying, you need to delete your thin blue line stuff. And, it's racist, and we're going to stop shopping you. And I'm getting wild messages to my personal DMs, CrossFit gym owners being like, we're going to ban you guys from our gym and this and that. And I'm like, guys, like, there's a million police officers in this country. I'm not going to denounce a million people. You know what I mean? And I'm just not going to do it. And we actually had a meeting because a couple of our employees are former police officers, and we kind of called everyone together like, all right, guys, we have this thin blue line stuff. And we actually had a few new styles that we're about to launch in a few weeks. And we're like, all right, we're kind of in the hornet's nest right now. What do you guys think? And we kind of, came to a pretty quick conclusion that, hey, we're not going to bend a knee to these people. I'm not going to let some guy at some CrossFit gym in New York City, slide into my DMs when I'm eating dinner and get me all fired up because, he's going to cancel me to his members because he owns the gym. And this is a real story. This is a guy that owned like the biggest CrossFit gym in New York City, is personally messaging me being like, if you don't denounce this and cancel your thin blue line, I will literally like tell my members how horrible you are. And like, these were real messages I was getting. So, in response, I was like, all right, well, we're going to go out of our way to support the veteran first responder community because you guys are all being ridiculous. And I kind of realized something I learned I was at an e-commerce convention in San Diego, and one of the main speakers said something that I thought was brilliant. He said, your customers don't choose you, you choose your customers. He's like, so whatever it is you're building, you can choose who is your crew, right? And how you project yourself will allow that to happen. And he said, and be deliberate, be exclusive about it, right? If you're trying to speak to everyone, you're speaking to no one. And that really resonated with me because I said, all right, regardless of the current demographic of our customers right now, in the next 5 years, I can choose who that customer is, right? And the people that I want shopping our company are people that, are grateful to be American in the freedoms and the liberties that we have, that recognize the sacrifice that generations of Americans did for us to give us the life we enjoy right now, and are not going to try to label me as, insert stereotypical name because I support the military and first responder communities. It's just not going to happen. So let's draw a line in the sand right now. Let's stick to our beliefs, and let's not get bent out of shape when we have a couple knuckleheads commenting on Instagram. And, I was dealing with that last night. Right. And I almost took the bait. Right. I was having dinner, and, my daughter's there eating chicken nuggets, and I saw it come down on the phone. And I could see the first sentence of the comment. So I knew it was one of those. And I looked at it, and the
Yeah.
old me would have got fired up and took it personal. And I was like, this is some dude in his basement that wouldn't tell this to my face in a million years because I probably outweigh him by 100 pounds. Yet he's, he's trying to take a shot at me because that's how they do it. Right. And we got to be above that. So I think right
Yeah.
now we're very comfortable with where we are. It has allowed us to create a very loyal base of customers. And it's at the end of the day, man, apparel is one of the most crowded spaces. I mean, I'm an idiot for being in apparel. Anyone you talk to that's been in apparel before that's gotten out are like, thank God I don't do that anymore. We have to do
Red
something
ocean.
different to stand out amongst the herd, right? And that's one of the ways we do it. We try to have, of course, good apparel as well, but it needs to be more than that. And we are trying to be a breath of fresh air and in an organizations that's not just going to go in whatever direction the corporate winds happen to be blowing that day, right? We're going to do the opposite. You know what I mean? We're going to cut against the grain, and I think that's what fires people up. And I commend you guys for doing the same thing. Daily prayer. Like, I love that, man. And again, that shouldn't be a controversial thing, right? There should be people that maybe aren't people of faith that could see that and say, right on, well, that's cool. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's not for me. But good on them, if that's how they, find peace and, and that brings them satisfaction and fulfillment in their life, or one of the ways, then I'm all for it. But it's become this all or nothing mentality, right? Oh, you believe in God? Well, you're crazy. That can't be real. You know what I mean? Why would you ever believe? You know what I mean? And it's like, guys, we can have a difference of belief, and still, kind of be rowing in the same direction. You know what I mean? So,
yeah, they don't have to utilize it. Have you found that, like, as you started expressing your freedom of speech as a brand, have you found that you're gonna push some team members out? Because there's probably some team members that are like, man, I just signed up because I wanted to work for some sweet apparel company, and now our organization is on the fringes and involved around a lot of political topics. Have you ran into that?
No. And honestly, I've made a point in team meetings to tell everyone, particularly, like, let's say I drop a podcast that's about freedom of speech and censorship and some of the topics I've ranted about. I'll say, hey guys, listen, I've seen what one side has done to outcast people that had an alternative viewpoint. I will never allow myself to become guilty of the same thing. So, hey, the beliefs that I express that are portrayed through Born Primitive, if those differ from your own personal beliefs, I will never fault you for that. And I don't also want anyone to feel uncomfortable in this environment if they have a different belief system, right? Because then I'm just as guilty as, the people that we just talked about that were labeling employees as this, and people are getting fired if they didn't comply. You know what I mean? I'm no better than them. So I've made a point in multiple meetings to express that. But I'll tell you this: when you've positioned yourself how we have over the years, when we hire people know, our value systems, and that attracts the right people. Not to say if someone is different, they're not a good fit here, but this is a big part of our company, right? So it wouldn't, you wouldn't want to work here if you were, oh yeah, let's bring in 20 million illegal immigrants and let's, make no genders and let's let 8-year-olds change their sex. You would not enjoy it here just naturally, because you're going to want to go work for some, hemp company or something, right? Like you're going to fit in great over there. But here at Born Primitive, you got a bunch of people walking around with sleeve tattoos. We got a safe full of guns right around the corner. You know what I mean? And the people that work here typically embody those values, but that's not a requirement. It's just it's who it attracts now. And I don't give a damn what someone's political beliefs are here at Born Primitive. They perform. This is a merit-based system, man. If you're a freaking pipe hitter and you're doing well, you're going to get promoted. You're going to get paid. It has no bearing on your belief system or anything like that. And that's how it should be. But it's cool, man. When we have people that interview now, that's one of the questions is like, well, hey, what do you like about the company? What drew you to this position? And 99% of the time it's, I love your values. I love that you give back to veterans. I love that how you guys are unapologetic and loving America. And hey, the job I'm coming from, it's the complete opposite. This is what I want to be a part of. And that to me means
Yeah.
we're doing it right because it's apparent, right? And we love that.
Yeah, it's kind of like that quote you just mentioned around your customers don't choose you, you can choose your customers, which is solid gold because you can get in that mindset of are people going to buy this? Are are the right people going to buy this versus that mindset of flipping that around and being like, I'm going to build this exact thing for this exact demographic. And it's almost the same with your employees. They're starting to find you because of what you stand for and just fitting into that ecosystem.
Absolutely.
Have you ran in have you ran into it at all on like the investor side, looking like at the future and looking down in the future where there's like big shops that are like, oh, I wouldn't touch those guys, they're too political.
Not really, so we'll probably pursue an investment in the next 18 to 24 months. And we were actually already in the process a couple of years ago, but the Silicon Valley Bank collapsed and it was just like the worst possible timing. But in that process, man, I made it very clear that, you know, I don't work for you. You're not going to come in and implement a cultural change in the company. I'm not going to let you mess with the secret sauce. That is the reason I think we're successful. And they can see me.
Yeah.
I got we the people on my arm. I got a skeleton George Washington. I'm wearing short sleeves that day on purpose to those meetings so they know exactly who they're working with, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that honestly is something that I will be very careful with, and I will be very blunt up front in any of those meetings with private equity people or family offices or whoever it is that might want to invest in Born Primitive is, hey, this is still Born Primitive, and I'm not going to corrupt you. I'm not going to let some dude in a suit in New York City corrupt this company, because as soon as you do that,
Yeah.
you lose what made it valuable in the first place. And we've seen that, man, with a lot of, brands who I won't mention but we compete with. I'm like, man, it must have been nice getting that paycheck, but now you guys are this corporate diluted brand and people are starting to see it, right? You have
Yeah.
hunting brands, man, that we compete with that aren't even supporting like hunters' rights. They're not even being outspoken
It's insane.
on these, propositions that are getting proposed at the state level, this ballot box biology. And it's like, that is literally your only demographic. You have a bunch of
Yeah.
hunters that look like you and me, that's all we care about, and you're not willing, because you're now owned by a private equity company, to support like hunters' rights. Like, it's so crazy, and it cracks me up because I'm like, well, thank you, because we're going to do it, and we're going to love America. And guess what? Little by little, those guys that are Western hunters that used to shop brand A or shop brand B are going to be like, man, well, those
Mm-hmm.
Born Primitive guys, I kind of like how they roll, right? Like, they're not afraid to support, our version of what wildlife conservation should look like, and preserving our hunting lands for our children, and you know what I mean. So
Yeah.
it blows me away because I think it's a strategic blunder. But these guys, man, they're wearing suits in New York City and San Francisco. They don't know, right?
They have
And
no
and of course
idea.
they have people that they work for, right? That are pushing these corporate agendas that you see. So I think it's very important, and that's why I will probably pursue a family office investment, because these are people that
Mm-hmm.
you find a family office that has the same values, and then it's no question, because they roll like you. Yeah, hey, we love it. That's why we want to
Yeah.
invest. You, Bear, you keep being you. That's why we want to cut you a check, and we're just going to sit back and let you do your thing. But a lot of
Yeah.
brands have done it the wrong way, man. Before you know it, you got all these new corporate mandates, and you're like, man, what happened to them?
It's crazy. Yeah, and it's not talked about much at all, that whole side of entrepreneurship, because there's going to be thousands of entrepreneurship conversations around how to get something off the ground, but it's very rare that anyone's going to talk about the transition on the back end of a successful company, whether that be majority or minority. But certainly what you see and definitely in our industry of hunting, military tactical, is 8 out of 10 of the ones that I've seen personally have not gone very well. And not gone well doesn't mean they didn't continue to crush it economically. Many of the time they're a much larger organization, but the culture and the DNA of the brand and all the original employees that drove that to be such a passion-filled brand are gone, and it's just this corporate America entity that is continuing to grow and maybe turn a profit, but you do not want that to happen to your legacy. If you think about those 24/7 work hours over the last 9, 10, 11 years, whatever it ends up being for folks, to just hand that over to someone that doesn't care about the culture it'd be hard to sleep at night after that.
Yeah, very well put, man. Some guys, they take the bait that check is dangled in front of them, and they don't realize they're making a deal with the devil. But guess, man, once that check clears, you work for them now, right? So the original founders' values, well, those are gonna definitely be up in the air, and it's there's a new sheriff in town after that.
Mountain Tough is the fitness app trusted by the dedicated. Mountain Tough ethos is backed by, we've always wanted to be the best in the world at helping our customers become more mentally tough. So inside the Mountain Tough app, you're not only going to find all of our physical training programs, but you're going to find additional training as well so that you can stay sharp physically, mentally, spiritually, and nutritionally. The Mountain Tough app also allows you to train no matter where you are, anytime, anywhere. Additionally, the Mountain Tough app is going to have programs from beginners all the way up to elite athletes. And all of our programming is structured in a way that you can start with no gear at body weight, and you can go all the way up to programming that is full gear. So you can do that in a robust home gym or your local gym. There's no excuse for you not to start today. With Mountain Tough, you can conquer your goals with the ideal program for your lifestyle and schedule. Train with equipment or just your body weight on your phone, tablet, TV, or web browser. Most importantly, Mountain Tough will help you train your mindset so you are always ready for anything life throws your way. Mountain Tough is offering the Mountain Tough podcast listeners an incredible offer. 6 weeks free on the Mountain Tough app. All you need to do is use the code MTNPOD to redeem your 6 weeks of training. That'll be a 14-day free trial plus a whole additional 4 weeks of training. Just go to mountaintough.com and enter code MTNPOD for your 6 weeks free on the best-in-class physical and mental training app. You've been listening to the Mountain Tough podcast. Well, let's talk about, we needed to make sure we recorded this today on election day, which we're still not sure what's going to happen here, so that we could get some info out in the next couple days of around what you have going on for your Veterans Day campaign, which you've always done amazing stuff to serve the veteran community, but this one's extra special. Do you want to break down the details of the campaign?
Would love to. Just curious, when will this air? Just so I know how to frame it up for the viewers.
Yeah, so this is going to go out on Monday.
Okay, so Veterans Day.
Which,
awesome.
Yep.
Well, yeah, I'll absolutely break it down. So long story short, every Veterans Day weekend, we try to do something significant to impact the veteran community. The last 3 years, we've donated 100% of profits, and donated close to $300,000 just from those initiatives. We're over $2 million to date as a company to charity. So that's been something from day one. Beyond just the values that I've talked about, I think it needs to be validated with real action, right? This can't just be a punchline. So, I served my country. I was proud to wear the uniform. I think I checked that box of, but hey, how do we leverage our platform to do some good? And this year, a couple months ago, we wrote a check that paid off $2.5 million of veteran medical bill debt, and we didn't tell anyone. And from November 8th to the 11th, so by the time this airs, it'll be the final day of the campaign. For 96 hours, we're going to pledge 100% of profits from bornprimitive.com to try to get another $2.5 million in debt paid off, totaling $5 million. It was an idea that came across the table working with a company called Forgive Co. that we wire the money
Mm.
to them, and then they go purchase the debt on our behalf and pay it off. And we've started to get, letters and people messaging us already that are starting to receive their debt letters, because I wanted it to hit, actually, they got mailed out last Friday. So people are starting to get their letters in the mail saying, hey, that $120,000 medical bill you had, it's gone. Born Primitive paid it off. And my phone's starting to
Unreal.
blow up because I told the ForgiveCo guy he can provide my information. And such a moving experience. I talked to a Marine yesterday on the phone, who was in Fallujah, had major PTSD and has been battling that since he got out. He's, it has crippling debt from all of those complications. Another girl from Texas was in the Army and then got in a car accident after she got out of the service. Major TBI, had to relearn all her basic skills. It was that bad of a brain injury. And
Man.
got into debt that she just would never have been able to pay off, right? Mother of two. So these are real people
Mm.
from all across America that are starting to get notified right before the holiday and right on the eve of Veterans Day, that, hey, there was a random act of kindness, your debt is now gone. And
That's
so
unreal.
if anyone wants to support the cause, head to bornprimitive.com. It'll end at midnight Pacific tonight, November 11th. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who's been with us in the past, because our customers are the reason we were able to do this, right? You and I talked about, we choose our customers. Well, we have chosen our customers. And that's why every year on Veterans Day, people get behind it, and it makes my ability to have a even bigger impact, easier, right? So when we were spinning this idea
Yeah.
up in June, I'm like, man, I think we can do this. I think the people will come out and support this because it's such a wild and aggressive
Hmm.
idea that we're going to go for. So yeah, we cut that first check August 15th. My brother, who's our CFO, thinks I'm absolutely nuts. And I said, hey, here's how this is going to work. I need you to trust me, right? And hey, sometimes I get that wrong. You know what I mean? I'm a fire from the hip, gut instinct kind of guy. But I have a feeling,
Yeah.
by the time this airs, we're going to have a lot of momentum. And just the coolest thing is those real stories, man, of this is Americans all over the country. There's one guy, 190K, that will be gone. I don't know if he's gotten his letter yet. I hope I
Unreal.
can talk to that guy. But a lot were 100
Yeah.
plus, a ton between 50 and 100 as well. And that's a significant impact because, as you are probably aware, veteran suicide has plagued our community for years, and it seems like it only gets worse. And
Hmm.
we know that financial distress can be a major contributing factor to veteran suicide, right? It's just one more thing to
Yeah.
pile on, right? You're going through a bad divorce, you have PTSD, you're having creditors call you every day to try to, from different phone numbers to bug you. Your credit scores tank, so you can't even get a used car unless you want to pay 30% interest rate. There's downstream effects of one thing. And why we wanted to do medical
Yeah.
debt was because that's something that you don't deliberately, that's no fault of your own. You don't, it's not like you just
Hmm.
bought a Ford Raptor for $110,000 and you're like, oh shoot, now I know 80 grand I can't afford. Like, that's kind of your own fault. You need to learn the hard way. But for these people on this
Yeah.
list, this is because of a medical event that was outside their control, and just rattled their life. So yeah, that's the gist of it, man. We're hoping to do this again next year. I can't spill the beans, but we're going to try to do an even bigger impact with another entity next year. I already got a verbal, but this is the first swing at it. I think $5 million is a significant impact, and hopefully
That's
it
significant.
encourages other companies that, hey, man, if the government is not going to save us, we as Americans need to help each other. And
Hmm.
without trying to rock the boat too much, part of this was inspired by, one, of course, the desire to help veterans, but two, the ridiculous irony that we're forgetting about people who are actually American citizens. Yet you can come across the southern border and be given a debit card, a room at the Roosevelt, healthcare, and a phone, right? I mean, literally, some of these people in New York get or they get the room cleaned every day by a cleaning service, as if you're staying at the Marriott, right? Clean sheets, make the bed,
Jeez.
put new soap. You know what I mean? And what a wild
Unreal.
comparison to think that that's a real like analogy. And then we have
Mm.
a guy who served in Fallujah as a Marine, infantry Marine, who saw a bunch of horrible things and has PTSD and complications from that with his heart. And he's, 20 grand in the hole that he'll never be able to pay off because he's an auto mechanic with 3 kids and he's just, and it's a 30% interest rate, right? He can never get out of that hole, particularly with what groceries and everything costs right now. That's just not fair. Right. So, I hope it'll maybe, inspire some action at the company level, because you think of like all these other big companies, man, that have more resources than, imagine like the American Expresses of the world and Apple, and you know what I mean? I mean, they could cut a check tomorrow and eradicate all veteran medical debt, literally. And it would be, a rounding error for them. Right. So it makes me hopeful that, hey, there are other solutions to this than relying on the government, because I hate to say it, like the government isn't going to save you. And if your plan is to rely on the government, you're going to be sadly disappointed. Right. But we as Americans can come together and help each other. And I hope it promotes a little bit more of that unity.
Yeah, it's a great example of personal agency. I mean, you're taking some agency to do this, but you're also inspiring all of us to lead together and work together on a lot of these issues. And debt is deep, man. It's like also biblical. We're a slave to our lender, and that is going to cause so much oppression in a lot of individual spirits, and certainly that's going to lead to a lot worse issues, like you mentioned. The suicide, that debt can be so overbearing, so overwhelming, just adding that extra layer to a lot of complicated issues. So this is phenomenal, man. Good on you guys for doing that. And it's certainly something that Mountain Tough's going to back 100%. We'll be getting this word out across all channels and getting our community fired up about it. They're already extremely fired up about Born Primitive and supporting a lot of similar issues, and so we'll rally the troops from our side.
Yeah, and last thing I'll say, just if anyone's listening that maybe has heard of us but don't know what we sell, we have apparel for all activities, right? We started as gym apparel, so we got that locked down. We have a performance shoe called the Savage One. It's a training shoe. And then recently we branched into the outdoor line, hunting line, and our tactical line. And we got flannels and jeans and literally everything. So if you like the cause, but you've never heard of us, head over to the site. You're going to get overwhelmed with choices, but maybe it's a guilt-free way for you to shop and not get in trouble with your spouse. Cause you could be like, hey man, it's for a good cause, right? I need those new shoes. And maybe get something for him or her as well, to keep you out of the doghouse. But I think we have some for everybody, and we hope people will rally and get behind it. And hopefully by the time this airs, we're on the home stretch. We'll have 24 hours left, or, I guess maybe closer to 12 hours of that day. Yeah. And obviously we're going to be anxiously watching it all weekend to see if we can hit the goal and unleash, another 2.5 of debt relief. But between you and me, that's like big. I'm probably going to do it anyway, because I'm a maniac, but I would like to, at least get the customers to help push us over the goal line,
Yeah, you might just have to sneak something by your brother's desk to make sure it happens. But
yeah.
And you guys are dropping those Savage One new color patterns like crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually have them here. We just launched. So this is the Betsy Ross edition here. It's got the Betsy Ross flag and then the We the People on the inner heel. So pretty cool little colorway there. And then paired with it is the Gadsden edition. So we got a black and yellow with the snake on the inner heel. We launched it. We called it our Freedom Capsule. So it just launched a few days ago. A little ballsy to launch it the Friday before an election, but that's just kind of how the cadence landed. These are values that go back to the American Revolution and the birth of our republic. So we thought it was an appropriate time to kind of launch these colorways. And as you know, like, we're not really shy on our loving our country and what it stands for. So it's very fitting.
I love it. Yeah, I love it, and it's a phenomenal shoe. Anyways, I mean, we've been rocking them around the gym, and it's everyone's favorite trainer, hands down.
Love it. Well, thank you, man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you coming on today. Appreciate everything you're doing. Proud of you. Love you. And, let us know what we can do from our side.
Well, thank you for giving me the platform to come on and speak with the listeners. And I'll have to get out there and hit a workout with you, man. I know we did the one at Western Hunt at the gymnasium, but I need to get out to your facility. Is TAC Big Sky happening again this year?
It is
June.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. June, and then we'll have Tough Fest right in there again too.
I was supposed to come to the last two, and I keep missing because of family stuff. But I will slot myself in, and I will come, get absolutely crushed in a workout before that kicks off with you. I'll have to start training for it.
Yeah.
I don't think I do the same. I do similar training, but I need to. That's one I might want to train for, so I don't get embarrassed in front of you.
We got to get you in the lab one of these days. I know we've been trying to make it work, but someday we'll get you out here.
Well, thank you so much, man. And obviously, if you guys ever need gear, shoot me a text. Be happy to take care of you guys. And I appreciate you being an ally to the brand, and more importantly, being willing to stand for strong values as well at a time when a lot are afraid to do that. So mad respect from my end, and keep it going, man.
Thanks, man. And courage is contagious. I mean, a lot of it comes from watching you, and watching what you've done has inspired me. So that's how it works. Like we gotta rally everyone together.
Agreed. Well, thank you for saying that.
Well, thanks, Bear.
All right, buddy.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
Good luck today, and we'll talk soon.
What a phenomenal conversation with Bear. I always get fired up chatting with him. An inspiring individual that certainly has that personal agency, that is leading and designing his life the way that he wants to see it. He's not sitting by passively and letting life lead him. He definitely has taken the reins and charging that ship. Remember, we're always looking for the big golden nugget from each episode. The one for me today, there was a lot in there. But any entrepreneurs out there, that golden nugget he dropped, that he quoted from that speech that he saw, of choosing your customers, not letting your customers choose you. So he talks about, if we build a brand that's speaking the language for these specific people, veterans, firefighters, first responders, the military, then they are going to seek us out rather than us building something generic and kind of muted. Then we won't find success. So that's been the same for the Mountain Tough journey. A very hard thing to do. You always want to please everybody, but then you end up pleasing no one. So I love that quote. And remember, Born Primitive has paid off $2.5 million in medical debt for veterans and aims to reach $5 million by Veterans Day. So you got about 12 hours left right now after this episode drops to help them achieve their goal. They're trying to raise another $2.5 million and donate all sales proceeds from their website. That's from November 8th through November 11th. And that's going to help alleviate that medical debt. So check them out. Make sure you go to their website, bornprimitive.com, and we will catch you guys on the next episode. Thanks for listening to the Mountain Tough Podcast. We'll see you next week.